Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's CJ. I want to welcome you guys back to episode 5 of the JBJ 65 gallon reef build. You guys guessed it. It's finally time to aquascape the tank. Some of you guys may have wondered what rock I was going to go with, or what aquascaping plans I was going to have for this tank. Well, this is the vid that's going to answer all those questions for you guys. So let's go ahead and get to it. As you guys can see, I'm unboxing roughly 40 pounds of real reef rock. Now, unfortunately, some of the branch rock did not survive the trip, but that's okay. We're gonna fix this. I'll show you guys how I did this later in the video. But for now, let's give you guys a quick look. This is my first time ever using this rock before. I was thoroughly impressed with how it looked, man. I'm telling you, already purple, already colored, and for the most part, already cured. And when I say cured, I mean actually live rock. The Tonga branch rock came in dry, but I was pleasantly surprised when I unboxed the rest of it. Every bit of this rock was wrapped in some kind of cloth or paper towel material, was still damp, and the rock itself still felt moist. It still felt wet. Now, it tells me two things. One, it definitely wasn't dry base rock. And two, from the smell of it, it literally smelled like the ocean, like it had gotten pulled out of the ocean. Now, that's not necessarily how this rock is made. This is man-made rock. Right here in the US, from what I understand, they have a storage facility, huge tubs where they actually cure this rock and have all kinds of life and everything actually added to this rock. So it did come with tube worms and microalgae growing on it and all kinds of critters and stuff that actually were in the box. Kind of creeped me out a little bit, but all in all, highly satisfied with the way this looks, the way it smells, and just the way it feels, man. I didn't really know what to expect. I heard about this purple rock. I always thought it was just colored food coloring rock or something, but it looks real, it feels real, and it definitely feels like the right decision for this JBJ. Now, for those of you all that have been around since my 120 gallon build, this is when I first introduced this Aquaforest Stone Fix. It's basically a reef cement, and it quick cures. Around 15 minutes or so, it's hardened, or at least hardened enough for you to actually, put rock in the tank, and it holds super strong. This stuff works so well. That scape never broke. I could literally pick up the entire scape in one piece. So I had to go back to it. This allows me to expand my creativity, meaning I don't have to worry about stacking rocks to balance them. I can mold them together, create, a unique aquascape that otherwise, I wouldn't be able to ever pull off without it falling over or tumbling and just, bad things happening. So for those wondering what I was using, this is the stuff I highly recommend. It works great, and it definitely is something I'm going to use on all builds. Comes to using this stuff, I'm going to give you guys a few pointers or at least tips that I've noticed from using it on the second time around. First one being disposable cups. You gotta have some kind of disposable spoons, plates, something you don't care about having to clean out. That way you're not rushing, and that way you can make small batches at a time, because this stuff cures pretty damn quick. It says 15 minutes, but if you're not careful, if you make a huge batch, you're gonna waste half of it because it's gonna turn into concrete on you before you get to use it. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, make sure that you are adding the powder to the cup first, and then a small amount of water. Now, of course, if you get your consistency wrong, you can add more powder to it, but I found you're more efficient and you don't waste as much whenever you mix it in that kind of way. Now, the consistency you're looking for is going to be a Play-Doh-y kind of, I don't know how you want to say it, mud type of consistency, soft enough to where you can push it into crevices, but hard enough to where it doesn't just drip everywhere and make a huge mess. It's going to take time. After the first few batches, you'll get the hang of it, but it comes with a huge tub of this stuff. So I was being very, very liberal with it because I knew I was going to have so much left over. I just wanted to make sure that all my overhangs and all the things that needed to have full support were going to be secure to the point to where I had no concerns of it being knocked over or anything breaking later down the road. Now, I will say from experience with this, using it on smaller rocks, I feel even more confident because the 120 gallon system, it was holding boulders together. My primary scape on that tank was about 80 pounds, and I can lift the whole thing up. On this, I have zero concerns, zero doubts that's going to get the job done for me. Now, it's also very, very important to have a plan. You don't just want to start winging your scape and securing rock together when you're not sure that's where it's going to be. In my case, I did my best to balance this rockscape to get an idea of what I wanted. Then I start locking pieces into place. Starting from the bottom up, getting my supporting structures together first, then working on my archways, and then lastly, my accent pieces. My Tonga branch, whatever other little pieces I wanted to add in, I did those last. So now for the cool part. It's time to make some concrete ice cubes. Nah, I'm just joking, guys. This is going to be what I'm going to use to float the scape. And by floating the scape, the plan is to suspend the entire rockscape around 1 inch or so above the glass for detritus and flow. And the whole point is, if you have limited points of contact, those are limited spaces for things to build up. So even if I have sand in this tank, which I do plan on having sand, it's going to allow a small gap between the sand and the structure and maximize the flow and hopefully keep things nice and clean in the system. As you guys know, whenever you move a piece of rock work that's been sitting in your tank, it's a huge cloud of detritus and all kinds of bad stuff that's had a chance to build up. This is going to prevent that for me. Now, the original plan was to use an acrylic rod to hold this up. Unfortunately, I'm a guy that doesn't have a bunch of tools, but I do have a bunch of ingenuity, meaning I have ways of getting around, making things work. So the thought was, hey, I got all this stone fixed, might as well use an ice cube tray, make my own feet for it, and then secure them into place. And that's exactly what I did, and I was thrilled to find out it worked perfectly. It was able to support both structures. I will say, probably would work a little better if you had a square ice cube tray instead of a rounded one. I made the mistake putting the rounded side down on the right structure and turned it into a I don't know, just trust me, you don't want to do that. It ended up rolling back and forth. It was not a good idea, but hey, keeping it honest here, I'm just hopefully sharing this idea with you all, inspire someone to improve on it. And if you like it, hey, go ahead and hit the thumbs up now, because there's a lot more to come. So for anyone that may be new to the hobby or new to aquascaping or just wondering how in the hell is CJ building this outside the tank and dropping it right in to fit inside the tank, well, it's going to be because I had a plan, guys, and part of that plan is building a template of the area I'm going to be putting this rock into. So by a template, you can either buy, a cardboard box and completely build a mock aquarium like I did on the 120-gallon system, or in this case, buying a table from Home Depot. I was lucky enough that this table matched the exact height of the stand, which is 36 inches, which allowed me to put it right in front of it and tape off just the dimensions of the display. So that way I can visualize the height I had to work with, visualize the width and the length to make sure this fit inside. Now the second part I want to mention is making sure I kept the tank modular, meaning the scape was broken up into 4 parts that made it easy to reassemble and easy to lift and put into the tank. So doing those 2 things is going to make your life easier and keep you from crying in the car from having the perfect scape that won't fit. Now the next important piece to remember is going to be glass maintenance, guys. Glass maintenance is going to be something you got to do for the life of your tank. And if you have a scape that does not give you room to even fit a mag float or a scraper or your hand or anything to clean that area of the glass, then you're never going to be able to fully enjoy your tank. What's the point of having a tank if you can't see it, right? So in this case, I was able to leave around a 2.5 to 3 inch gap around the left, front, and sides of the tank. Now in the back of the tank, not really as much room back there as I wanted, but I was working with limited space, guys. Only around 14 inches or so of depth front to back to deal with. So I was able to fit this entire scape in, create that sense of depth, and also at least give me 3 sides of clean glass for the future to view it. Now when it comes to the water movement in this tank, I gotta tell you guys, floating the scape is probably one of the best ideas that I've ever did on this system. Look at it. I mean, if you take a look and just imagine if I didn't have those feet on there, full contact of that aquascape on the bottom was just gonna create a ton of dead spots and a ton of pockets for detritus to build up. Only 6 points of contact and an inch or so gap between the entire scape and the glass is going to allow tons of water movement through, around, and under the entire aquascape. So for anyone that has a bare bottom tank, I'm hoping that you see this and maybe improve on it, or utilize it on your system. And even if you're going to have sand in your system like me, don't overdo it. Float your scape, add enough sand for livestock, but still leave it below the rockscape itself, and you still will be able to benefit from that. So that's the plan for me. Very flow friendly, flow heavy system that's going to allow me to keep everything suspended, keep the water movement, and hopefully keep this tank successful for the long term. So hopefully this gave you guys a quick idea of what it took to put this scape together, or at least some of the thought that went behind it. Roughly 5 hours of work, which was probably one of the faster aquascapes I've done, and cementing it together, letting things cure. But the main thing I wanted to share was the things I consider. The flow the scape's going to allow, glass maintenance, making sure I can actually remove it and put it in the tank. And then when it comes to the aesthetic values of it, considering keeping the tank balanced. The rule of thirds, the golden rule, are things that I always have used on my systems, but in this tank it's a little different than usual. I didn't do the pillars I normally do. I didn't have something going straight to the surface. I definitely stepped outside of the box and tried something new, and I'm pleasantly surprised with the results, guys. So there's a tons more thought that goes into when I do things like this. So hopefully this covered the general basis for you guys, but if you have any other questions, drop it down below, or I'll cover this in a future live stream for you guys. So hey, it's time to get out of here, because it's time to put water in this tank. So as always, hey, you guys like, comment, subscribe. You guys keep doing what y'all do. Y'all be easy, and I'll catch you guys the next video. Peace.